Hello, greetings! Gusto niyo bang malaman tungkol sa mga volcanoes? Ano ba ang volcano? At ano ba ang mga pinsala na dinudulot ng mga volcanoes? Well, if you want to know more about volcanoes, then you should watch this video. Please subscribe to my channel, The Science Guy, and also click on the notification bell para ma-update po kayo sa aking mga future videos. And also please like and share this video para po makarating po sa mga estudyante na gustong matuto tungkol sa siyensya. Okay, wag na tayo magpatumpik-tumpik pa. Let's watch this! Hello, greetings! So for this lesson, we shall study volcanoes. Now, this topic on volcanoes is also related to our discussion on plate tectonics. The movement of these tectonic plates has something to do with the formation and eruption of volcanoes. Now, what is a volcano anyway? Now, a volcano technically is a specialized mountain. A volcano basically is a mountain formed of lava and or pyroclastic material. Now, what do we mean by this term pyroclastic material? Now, when we speak of pyroclastic material, it means that these are materials composed of clouds of ash, lava fragments carried through the air, and vapor. Pyroclastic material is another name for a cloud of ash, lava fragments which is carried through the air, and vapor. Alright, and also this specialized mountain has an opening which we call a crater. Now, a crater is a depression or an opening at the summit of a volcano. Now, this opening or crater at the summit of the volcano is connected to a tube-like structure called a conduit or pipe. Now, a conduit or pipe is that long tube-like structure inside the volcano connected to the crater, that's the opening at the summit of the volcano, that carries gas-rich magma to the surface. Now, everybody, I want you to take a look at this animated illustration of a typical volcano. So a volcano again is a specialized mountain. Then at the summit of that mountain is an opening called crater, and that opening is connected to a tube-like structure called a conduit or pipe that carries gas-rich magma to the surface. So that is the anatomy of a typical volcano. It's a specialized mountain again. Then at the summit you have the crater. That crater is connected to this long tube-like structure called conduit or pipe that carries magma to the surface. So that's the anatomy of a typical volcano. A volcano is nothing more than a specialized mountain with an opening at the summit of the volcano which we call as crater. Now, this crater is connected to a long tube-like structure called a conduit, pipe, or vent. And this conduit or pipe or vent carries gas-rich magma to the surface. Now, the source of magma is deep inside the volcano, which we call as the magma chamber. Now, at this point, let us now study and enumerate the different types of volcanoes. There are three types of volcanoes. So we have shield volcanoes, cinder cone volcanoes, and composite volcanoes. Now, what are shield volcanoes anyway? Now, when we speak of shield volcanoes are basically broad, they are gently sloping volcanoes, and they are built from basaltic lava. Alright, so everybody, kindly take a look at this illustration of a shield volcano. Now, shield volcanoes are the largest volcanoes in terms of volume and in diameter. They can be tens to hundreds of kilometers across or more. A shield volcano got its name from its appearance. It is large in terms of area but much flatter than the other two types of volcanoes. Now, viewed from above, it looks like a warrior shield, hence the term shield volcanoes. Slightly raised in the center with long, gently sloping sides, as you could see in this illustration. Okay, so that's a shield volcano. Now, examples of shield volcanoes includes Mount Kilauea and Mauna Loa in the Hawaiian Islands. Alright, so that's how we describe shield volcanoes. Again, shield volcanoes, these are volcanoes with broad bases and with gently sloping sides. And in terms of its composition, shield volcanoes are composed primarily of basaltic lava, like Mauna Loa in the Hawaiian Islands. Mauna Loa is an example of a shield volcano. Now, let's proceed to the second type of volcano, which we call as cinder cone volcanoes. Now, what are cinder cone volcanoes? Now, cinder cone volcanoes, these are small volcanoes built primarily of pyroclastic materials that are ejected from a single vent. And in terms of its appearance, cinder cones, they appear as steep volcanoes, so they exhibit steep sloping sides or steep slope angle, and they are usually small. They are rather small in size. So those are cinder cone volcanoes. Cinder cone volcanoes, in terms of appearance, they have steep sloping sides, and these volcanoes are rather small, and they also occur in groups. And in terms of composition, these volcanoes, they are made primarily of pyroclastic materials, especially cinders. Okay, so these volcanoes, they are rather small, they occur in groups, and in terms of their appearance, they have steep sloping sides. Okay, and the best example of this type of volcano is our very own Taal volcano. The Taal volcano is an example of a cinder cone volcano. Alright, so to further explain the nature of Taal volcano, let's watch this video about our very own Taal volcano. Alright, let's watch this.
Gaano nga ba kalaki ang bulkang Taal? Marami ang may akala na ang binintiang malaki ang buong bulkan. Pero isa lang itong crater o bunganga ng bulkan. Merong mahigit 40 craters ang Taal volcano. Ang pinakamalaking crater ang tinatawag na main crater at ito ang pinagmumula ng mga pagputok ngayon. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na sa main crater lang nagmula ang mga dating pagsabog. Noong 1707 eruption, nagmula sa binintiang malaki ang pagsabog. Noong 1729 naman, nagkaroon ng pagputok mula sa binintiang munti. Hindi lang ang mga crater na ito ang bahagi ng bulkan, kundi pati ang buong Taal Lake. Ang bulkang Taal kasi ay isang kaldera o parang malaking palanggana. Sinasabing nabuo ito dahil sa pagkasira ng orihinal na tuktok ng bulkang Taal matapos ang maraming pagsabog o posibleng isang malaking pagsabog. Naubos ng magma sa ilalim na sumusuporta sa bulkan kaya bumigay ang tuktok ng bulkan at nabuo ang kaldera. Dahil sa ulan, napuno ito ng tubig at naging lawa. Pero dahil sa patuloy na pagputok, nagkaroon ng isla sa gitna ng Taal Lake na tinatawag na Pulo o Taal Volcano Island. Dito lang merong aktibong craters. Ibig sabihin, dito lang pwede magmula ang pagsabog ng bulkan. Hati ang pulo sa dalawang bayan, ang Talisay at ang San Nicolas. Kahit napapalibutan ang pulo, ang lawa na tinatawag na Taal Lake, ang bayan ng Taal ay wala sa dalampasigan ng Taal Lake. Pero kung saan ang San Nicolas ngayon, doon ang dating bayan ng Taal at sa ring dating kabisera ng Batangas Province.
Now that is really interesting and fascinating about our very own Taal volcano. Okay, so at this point, let us now proceed to the third type of volcano. So the third type of volcano is what we call as composite volcanoes. Now, composite volcanoes, these are volcanoes that are composed primarily of both basaltic lava and pyroclastic materials like cinders. And most of these volcanoes, they are located adjacent to the Pacific Ocean, such as Mount Rainier. And these volcanoes are quite large. These are large-size volcanoes. And if you will examine the interior of composite volcanoes, they are composed of interbedded layers of lava and pyroclastic materials. And these volcanoes are considered the most violent type of volcanoes. So those are cinder cone volcanoes. They are composed of basaltic lava and pyroclastic materials. Okay, and they are considered the most violent. They are large volcanoes. And one good example of a composite volcano is our very own Mayon volcano. Mayon volcano is an example of a composite volcano. Mayon volcano is quite violent and quite active. Okay, and composite volcanoes, these are the most violent and active volcanoes in the world. So that's our very own Mayon volcano. Now, another example of a composite volcano is Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens in the United States erupted on May 18, 1980. And if you would compare these pictures of Mount St. Helens before the eruption and after the eruption, you would see the damage caused by the eruption of Mount St. Helens. So you would see that lake before the eruption. Now, after the eruption, that lake was covered with pyroclastic materials. So that's how violent the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Now, at this point, let us now study the factors that affect a volcanic eruption. Now, factors that determine the violence of a volcanic eruption includes the following. So first, we have the composition of the magma. Number 2 would be the temperature of the magma. And number 3, the dissolved gases in the magma. Now, another factor that affects the eruption of volcanoes would be the viscosity of the magma. Now, what do we mean by viscosity? Now, viscosity is defined as the measure of the material's resistance to flow. Or in Tagalog, ang ibig sabihin niyan, yung lapot ng magma. Okay, so the viscosity of the magma is also a deciding factor that affects the eruption of volcanoes. Now, to put it simply, when we speak of viscosity or the measure of the material's resistance to flow, ang ibig lang sabihin nito, ito po yung lapot ng magma. Okay? So, yung degree ng lapot ng magma is known as its viscosity. Now, the viscosity of the magma will depend on several factors. Now, what are these factors affecting the viscosity of the magma? Now, number 1 is temperature. Okay? So this means that the hotter the magma, the less viscous it is. So kung mainit na mainit yung magma, ay hindi po siya gaanong malapot as compared to magmas or cooler magmas, mas malapot po yan. Okay? Now, another factor would be the composition of the magma. Now, when we say composition, we refer to this as the silica content of the magma. So this means that the higher the silica content of the magma, the higher is the viscosity. Ibig sabihin po nito, pag mataas yung silica content ng magma, mas malapot po siya. Okay, example, we have rhyolitic lava. And pag mababa yung silica content, the lower the silica content, hindi po siya malapot. The lava is less viscous, like basaltic lava. Now, another factor that may affect the eruption of a volcano would be the amount of dissolved gases present in the magma. Now, these dissolved gases are mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide. And these gases, they tend to expand near the surface. These gases, eventually, they escape through openings called vents. Now, a vent is an opening in the surface of the earth through which molten rock and gases are released. We can also consider the crater of the volcano as a form of vent through which molten rock and gases are released. Okay? And this expansion of the gases provides the force needed for the molten rock to escape or to be released out of the volcano. Now, what does viscosity and dissolved gases got to do with the violence of an eruption? Now, the violence of an eruption is related to how easily gases escape from magma. Now, here is the general rule that gases escape easily from fluid magma. Now, what does that mean? Now, ibig lang sabihin nito, pag yung magma ay fluid or less viscous, yung mga dissolved gases na nasa magma na yan will escape easily. So, pag madaling lumabas yung mga dissolved gases na yan, hindi masyadong violent yung eruption ng volcano. Now, this is in contrast if the magma is viscous. So, pag malapot ang magma, the gases will have difficulty escaping. So, pag nahihirapan lumabas yung mga dissolved gases, pag ang magma ay viscous, mas violent yung eruption ng volcano. Okay? So, that's how viscosity and dissolved gases affect the violence of an eruption. So, if the magma is less viscous, mas madaling lumabas yung mga dissolved gases. So, hindi gaanong violent yung eruption pag madaling lumabas yung mga dissolved gases sa magma. Now, if the magma is viscous, pag malapot yung magma, mahihirapan lumabas yung mga dissolved gases. So that means na mas violent yung eruption ng volcano kasi nahihirapan lumabas yung mga dissolved gases dahil yung magma ay malapot. So that is the relationship between viscosity, the dissolved gases, and the degree of eruption of a volcano. Alright, so that's really interesting about the violence of an eruption. Now, before we continue, let's watch this fascinating video about volcanoes. Alright, let's watch this.
Here are 3 examples of what could cause a volcano. This super simple image contains the land and water on the surface of a crust with the magma underneath. I am not a graphic designer, as you can tell. In some cases, 2 pieces of crust move towards each other as tectonic plates are moving along the surface of the Earth. Over thousands, maybe even millions of years, the crust smashes together and pushes down into the magma, heating it up and creating an excess of magma that needs to release, so it pushes up through the crust and erupts. These plates can also move away from each other, splitting apart and causing new magma to rise to the surface. This sometimes results in vents underwater or even underwater volcanoes, which can still erupt in the same way that an above-ground volcano can. Now, our third theory is about what are called hotspots, which is basically an area of extreme heat that hits the crust, and as the magma slowly cools down, it builds islands and mountains. This hotspot doesn't move, but the crust does. So as the plates move, the hotspot slowly builds a volcanic range of mountains and potentially volcanoes. Again, this is just a popular theory for ranges of volcanic action, such as areas of Hawaii. Now let's zoom in and start looking at volcanoes more closely. They can be formed in many ways. We'll start with what are called shield volcanoes. They are usually created by slow magma flows, creating a shield-like shape. They tend to not explode in the same ways that other volcanoes do. We also have lava domes, built by extremely thick lava that cools quickly, so it doesn't travel far and it builds up into domes and rugged peaks. These volcanoes can erupt violently, though the lava doesn't travel far. There are also things called fissure vents, which are long, flat fractures that allow lava to emerge, usually not exploding. Sometimes mineral fragments can build up around a vent and create what's called a cinder cone volcano, building quickly. They tend to have a bowl-shaped crater at the top, filled with this rocky debris. If they erupt, they tend to only erupt once, but there have been cases of them erupting many times. These often exist on the outskirts of other larger volcanoes. Next we have stratovolcanoes, or composite volcanoes, called this because they're a composite of many alternating cycles, where they might erupt and the lava hardens to create a new layer and then the process repeats. They have very threatening clouds of ash that can follow, as they tend to be incredibly tall and the pressure is very great. The largest volcanoes are appropriately called supervolcanoes, where the magma rises but is unable to break through, so the volcano grows and grows until the pressure is extreme. These volcanoes are the ones that can end civilizations. They can make species extinct and even change the climate, such as triggering ice ages, the ash in the air stopping the sun from properly heating the Earth's surface. Now let's talk about some of the biggest or most significant volcanoes we know of. In the United States, we have Yellowstone in the state of Wyoming. Yellowstone has a supervolcano under the surface that heats the water and land above it, creating the geysers and hot water springs that tourists visit Yellowstone to see. The last time it erupted was about 640,000 years ago, which caused the area to collapse down and be buried how it is today. It's unsure if the volcano will ever erupt again, but if it did, it would cover most, if not all, of the United States in ash, and the closest states would be devastated. While we're in the mainland United States, we should discuss one of the most recent volcanoes there. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington state, deemed the most destructive volcanic eruption in the United States, at least since the civilized world. The ash fell on 11 nearby states and caused billions of dollars in damage, killing 57 people. Moving to Italy, we look at Mount Vesuvius. This volcano erupted regularly in 20-year intervals, give or take, but it last erupted in 1944, meaning we're a bit overdue. This is the volcano that erupted in 79 AD and buried the city of Pompeii, leaving human-sized voids in the ash and petrified magma, allowing scientists to create molds of these people in their last moments. They are still excavating and discovering more about the city. The largest recorded volcanic explosion is Mount Tambora in Indonesia. This explosion in 1815 was so loud that it was heard more than 1,200 miles away and killed over 71,000 people. This volcano is indeed still active and is one of the tallest peaks in Indonesia today. Many of us likely don't have first-hand experience with volcanoes, so what we learn about them, we learn from movies and television. During the golden age of natural disaster movies, we got gems like Dante's Peak, which created a fictional volcano in a fictional city. This movie did a lot of things right, but its characters managed to survive feats that should have killed a normal person. In reality, when ash falls, it's microscopic glass that would nearly kill anyone or anything that inhaled it. But I guess that doesn't make for exciting entertainment. This same concern came up for the film Volcano, in which a giant volcano strikes Los Angeles, something that is scientifically near impossible. The fault lines that cause earthquakes are not the same type that might cause volcanoes. Not traditionally, not commonly. But again, entertainment. So hopefully this helps you understand volcanoes a little bit more.
Now that is really interesting and fascinating video about the nature of volcanoes. Now at this point, let us now study materials that are ejected during volcanic eruptions. And one of the most common materials that are ejected from volcanoes is lava. Now lava basically is hot molten or semi-fluid rock erupted from a volcano. Now there are two types of lava. First, we have what we call pahoho lava. Pahoho lava resembles braids in ropes. And we have aa lava. Aa lava appears rough and jagged. And also, gases are ejected during volcanic eruptions. Only 1 to 5% of magma by weight are dissolved gases. Now, the gases that are ejected during volcanic eruptions are mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide with traces of sulfur dioxide. Okay, so here is a picture of pahoho or ropey lava. So again, when we speak of pahoho or ropey lava, they appear as braids in ropes. Okay, here is another illustration or picture of pahoho lava. So as you could see in this picture, the lava appears as braids in ropes. Okay, and here is a picture of aa lava. So when we speak of aa lava, these are jagged and rough type of lava. So as you could see in the following pictures. Okay, so that's aa lava. So those are the types of lava. So we have pahoho lava like the one in the picture. So when you say pahoho lava, they appear as braids in ropes. And lastly, we have aa lava. So when you say aa lava, they are jagged and rough in appearance. Now, another type of volcanic material that is ejected during volcanic eruptions are pyroclastic materials. Now, pyroclastic materials is the name given to particles produced during a volcanic eruption. And these particles, they are ejected during eruptions ranging in size from very fine dust and volcanic ash that is less than 2 millimeters in diameter to pieces that weigh several tons. So the following are examples of pyroclastic materials that are ejected during a volcanic eruption. So the first type of pyroclastic material that is ejected from a volcano is volcanic ash and dust. Now volcanic ash and dust, these are fine glassy volcanic fragments. Then we have pumice. When we speak of pumice, this is frothy air-filled lava. Then we have lapilli and cinders. Now cinders, these are pea-sized particles, and larger than cinders are lapilli. Lapilli are walnut-sized volcanic particles. Now there are pyroclastic materials that are even larger than the lapilli. So we have volcanic blocks. Volcanic blocks, these are hardened lava that is thrown out from a volcano. Then we have volcanic bombs. Volcanic bombs are thrown out or ejected as hot lava during a volcanic eruption. Okay, so those are the pyroclastic materials that are ejected during a volcanic eruption. Alright, so this this is volcanic ash and dust, as you could see in the picture. Then we have pumice. Pumice is air-filled lava, and because of the air pockets in it, pumice can actually float on water. Then we have cinders. Cinders are pea-sized volcanic particles, and even larger than cinders are lapilli. Lapilli are walnut-sized volcanic particles. Now, pyroclastic materials that are larger than the lapilli are the following. So first, we have what we call volcanic bombs. Now, volcanic bombs, these are molten rocks that are thrown out when a volcano erupts, and they travel only short distances. And because of that, they can start fires within the vicinity of the volcano. Then we have volcanic blocks. Volcanic blocks are solidified rock fragments greater than 64 millimeters in diameter. These blocks commonly are ejected during explosive eruptions, and they are made up of older pieces of the volcano. So those are the types of pyroclastic materials that are ejected during a volcanic eruption. Now, I hope everything is clear about pyroclastic materials. Now, let's talk about volcanic landforms. Now, a common volcanic landform are calderas. Now, calderas, these are large depressions in volcanoes. And in terms of their appearance, they are nearly circular. And these calderas are formed by the collapse of the magma chamber, which I will explain later. And in terms of the size, calderas, they exceed at least 1 kilometer in diameter. So everybody kindly take a look at this animated illustration showing how calderas are formed. Okay, so we have here a volcano. So you have magma supplying these pyroclastic materials. Now once the magma chamber empties of magma, pag wala ng laman yung magma chamber, then the magma chamber collapses, forming a depression which we call a caldera. Alright? So that's how calderas are formed. When the magma chamber empties of magma, then eventually the magma chamber collapses, forming a depression, as you could see in this animated illustration. Okay, so once that magma chamber collapses, because there's no more magma in it, then that forms a caldera. Okay? Alright, so I hope that's clear for the formation of the caldera. So the caldera forms once the magma chamber is emptied of magma. Now let's watch this fascinating video about the largest caldera in the world. And did you know that the largest caldera in the world is right here in the Philippines? It's in the Benham Rise, and they call it Apu-Laki. So we thought that Taal volcano is the largest caldera in the world, but they discovered a caldera underwater and they called it Apu-Laki. And Apu-Laki is the largest caldera in the world. Alright, so let's watch this.
Natagpuan sa Benham o Philippine Rise ang pinaniniwalaang pinakamalaking kaldera sa buong mundo. Ito yung uka na iniwan ng isang underwater volcano. Kasya raw sa loob nito ang mahigit 7 Taal Lake. Ang nakadiskubre nito, isang Pinay scientist. May live report si Chino Gaston. Chino?
Tina, isa na namang underwater feature ang nadiskubre ng mga dalubhasa dyan sa may Benham Rise. At ito na nga ang pinakamalaking kaldera sa buong mundo. No? Ito rin ang dahilan ayon sa mga ilang dalubhasa na ating nakausap kung bakit napakayaman sa lamang dagat itong Benham Rise, kung saan matatagpuan ng ilan sa pinakamahal na isda sa buong mundo. Ang pambihirang yamang dagat na makikita sa Benham o Philippine Rise, gaya ng mga malawak na coral reefs at mamahaling commercial fish tulad ng bluefin tuna, bunga raw ng mga volcanic eruption na nagbuo ng volcanic plateau may 47 milyong taon na ang nakararaan. Nadiskubre nga rito ng New Zealand-based Pinay geophysicist na si Jenny Barreto at dalawang kasamahan ang kaldera o crater na iniwan ng isang underwater volcano. Pinangalanan nila itong Apo-Laki na ibig sabihin ay higanting Panginoon o pinuno, hango sa Filipino mythical God of the Sun and War. Base na rin sa inilathalang research paper ni Barreto at kanyang mga kasamahan, ang Apo-Laki ang maituturing na pinakamalaking kaldera sa buong mundo. Ayon kay Barreto, may diameter ng 150 kilometers ang Apo-Laki Caldera, katumbas ng distansya mula Quezon City hanggang Paniki, Tarlac. Kasya rin sa loob ng Apo-Laki Caldera ang higit 7 Taal Lake. Halos triple ang laki nito kumpara sa Yellowstone Caldera ng Amerika. Nabubuo ang isang kaldera dahil sa pagguho ng isang bulkan na lumilikha ng higanteng butas sa lupa. Sabi ng FIVOX, milyong taon ng dormant ang bulkang lumikha ng Apo-Laki Caldera.
Sa tingin natin, mga 20 million years ang kanyang activity, around 46 million years ago to 26 million years ago. Pero dahil ito ay matagal nang hindi sumasabog, hindi dapat mangamba ang ating mga kababayan dyan.
Posibleng nag-iwan din ng chromite, nickel at manganese deposits ang mga underwater eruptions doon. Pero ayon kay Solidum, imposibleng may langis dito.
Imposibleng magka-oil kasi ang oil ay galing sa mga vegetation, sa forest. Walang ganyan dyan sa lugar na yan.
Tina, hindi rin binuburan ng posibilidad ng mga dalubhasa na maaring may naipon ding iba pang mga mahalagang elemento, no? Yung nakaraang volcanic activity nitong caldera dyan sa may Benham Rise. Kabilang na sa mga elemento maaring matagpuan daw doon ay ilang mahalagang elements, no? O metals gaya ng pilak at ng ginto. Tina.
Chino, itong Apo-Laki, paano na-discover ng team ni Jenny Barreto?
Well, alam mo, Tina, no, hindi malinaw sa atin kung paano ito specifically na ito ba'y natisod lang or based on satellite data. Kasi kung titingnan mo yung features ng Philippine Rise, no, kahit na sa mga social media apps na available ngayon, makikita natin yung underwater features na dati nang na-map. So ito'y na-confirm lamang ng team ni Barreto nang sila nagbaba ng mga instrumento at nagkaroon ng scanning doon sa may lugar sa kanilang pagpunta doon. Kung kaya't na-confirm yung underwater features at syempre yung mga soil samples na rin nakuha doon, confirms na yung mismong plateau ng Benham Rise ay volcanic basalt kung tawagin. No? Ito isang uri ng bato na nililikha ng paglabas ng lava mula sa bulkan. Kung kaya't na-confirm, ito na nga ay volcanic caldera at nasukat din nila ang laki nito gamit ang kanilang mga instrumento. Tina.
Chino, wala nang ine-expect na activities dito sa caldera o active pa ba ito o dormant na?
Well, ayon sa FIVOX, dormant na ito, no, or extinct yung volcano sa ilalim. Kung kaya't nagkaroon na nga ng kaldera dahil naglikha na ng malaking explosion at nag-collapse na yung pinaka-dome nito. At ayon na rin kay Yusek Solidum, no, nag-shift na yung volcanic activity ilang tens and millions of years ago mula dito sa lugar na ito palabas sa outer Pacific Rim. Kung kaya't nandun na yung makikita nating tinatawag na Pacific Ring of Fire, no? Pero hindi rin binubura yung possibility na dahil dating ang mga bulkan nito, may mga steam vents dyan sa loob, no? Kung saan nagmumula yung mainit na tubig na siyang naglilikha nga daw, no? O nakakatulong sa paglikha ng mga lamang dagat, no? Gaya ng plankton na siyang nag-a-attract naman ng ibang mga uri o mas malalaking uri ng isda. Kung kaya't yung closed environment na napaka-yaman dyan ang siyang nagbubunga at nagre-resulta ng napakaraming isda sa lugar. Tina.
Chino, ang discovery nitong Apo-Laki, I'm sure very exciting ito para sa scientific community. Pero para sa ating mga laymen, ano bang implications nito? Lalo pa, nabanggit mo yung Pacific Ring of Fire, meron bang implications ito sa tectonic activity? Tapos dahil nasa Philippine Rise siya, pwede ba natin niyang ma-explore?
Alright. Actually, di natama ka, no? Yan yung una nating natanong dito sa FIVOX. Kung malaking kaldera, hindi natin ma-imagine, no, na merong bibig ng bulkan na 150 kilometers ang laki. So agad
Dito
nating
pa rin
maiisip gaano kalakas ang pagsabog o pagyanig na kaya nitong ilika kapag ito'y sumabog. Pero sabi nga ni Yusek Solidum ay wala nang danger ito dahil matagal na, millions of years ng extinct. Kung meron mang benefit itong kaldera na ito, yung mga ridges o yung nilikha nitong mga peaks, no, na iniwan nung siya sumabog, yun yung mga mabababang lugar ngayon na matatagpuan sa Benham Rise kung saan yung concentration ng isda ay napakarami at nandun ang halos lahat ng mga lamang dagat na hinahanap ng iba't ibang mga bansa sa ngayon gaya ng bluefin tuna. So kapag napangalagaan natin at namapa ng husto itong rim or yung lip ng kaldera, malaking bagay ito, Tina, no, para makatulong sa ating mga mangingisda na mag-guide sila kung saan dapat magpunta, no, kaysa mag-aksaya ng panahon, kakaikot sa buong 135,000 square kilometers ng buong Benham Rise. Tina.
I'm sure marami pang mga researchers na gagawin tukol dito sa Apo-Laki Caldera na ito. Maraming salamat, Chino Gaston.
Well, I guess that's it for our study of volcanoes. So I hope you have learned a lot about this lecture on volcanoes. So please subscribe to my channel, The Science Guy, Jun Cahigal, and please click on that notification bell so that you would be updated of my future science videos. Alright, so this is your commander, Jun Cahigal, The Science Guy, saying live long and prosper, and please subscribe to my channel and click on that notification bell. Okay, so see you next time in my future videos. Bye bye, and always stay safe.